I'll come a little closer.
Good morning. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, March 19th, 2018 to order, as is our normal start. Charlie, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie. Item 2, public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board in public forum? Hearing none, let's move on to item 3, and that is to approve minutes. 3.1 would be the March 5th, 2018 regular meeting minutes. Are there any comments, questions?
Their acceptance.
Anybody else?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
3.2, the March 6th, 2018 special meeting minutes. Any comments, questions, or changes? Move it.
I'll move it.
Okay.
Second.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, accused? None. Motion carries. Item 4. It's Director's report.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary Jane.
I'd like to start with revenues.
That will be a good idea.
First thing I'd like to note is a typo on the town clerk's line. Last year's collection rate was 70. The percentage was 78.3, not 8.3. So,
Dropped off it.
so on the town clerk, we do have a lower percentage than last year, but it is on target based on this year's budget. Considering we're about 66% through the year, they're at 62. We did adjust their budget this year, so it would only make sense that their percentage at this time would be lower than last year. Natural resources, I did have a conversation with Kevin, not that he's got a huge budget, but it was showing a little bit lower. They are experiencing less applications than normal at this time, and the applications that are coming in are minor activities, so they're not bringing in the fees that we would normally see. Quick note on the state revenue, where we stand right now. We're 47% for the Board of Education ECS and 62% for Board of Education, look at the wrong column, sorry, and 31.8 of other states. So I'd just like to note at the end of the year, I expect ECS to be at 124.1%, because if you remember, we budgeted lower than we're actually receiving. All the other revenue would be only at 55.9% at the end of the year. Overall, 96.3%, or that same 118,000 that we've been talking about shy for the year. So that's where I expect the state revenues to come in at still at that point. So.
Okay.
Now, this fire is really running.
Yeah,
You hate to say
It's
that, not enough ambulance calls, but
according to Charlie, the Medicare reimbursement is less than normal, so that's attributing to the lower
do they think
percentage
they're
at
going to
this
hit
time.
budget?
Most likely, because we should. So, but
So it
we
still
are
might
watching
be a
that.
timing, though, even though it's
On top of timing, it's the Medicare, yes. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to, but we're watching that closer.
Back to state. Your estimation of the 59% on the balance of the non-ECS number payments, does that include town road aid? Because there seems to be a holdback. I understand the governor may be holding that back at this point.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. So that would be an additional reduction there.
Right. One other thing I just wanted to mention, because I'm sure we'll get some questions about it this evening, and that is tax collection. We are at just over 100%, largely a result of
tax law changes.
Well, some paid in full, but not only that, but prior year's taxes significantly higher, and also tax interest and liens were way over. So it's so that's going to obviously fall to the bottom line in terms of fund balance. Correct?
Correct. And I just note on the change in the tax law where we received additional, it doesn't change our overall taxes. It just means we got them in earlier.
So by now, we're even.
Correct. I'm not sure if all the refunds, we did have a number of refunds because many homeowners chose to pay in December for their January taxes, and then come January, the escrows kicked in. So we did have a
Double
number
payments
of
and all that.
yeah. So it did cause a little.
Thanks.
So
Yes.
in that
What-
case, do we refund to the escrow or to the individual?
It's typically refunded to the second payment. So
Oh, I see. Interesting.
But in this case, there might have been some different decisions made. I'd have to check with Debbie specifically on that.
Yeah, it's hard to refund escrow to a bank.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
issue,
wow.
is that they're escrow. Anyway, the other question is, what kind of a dollar value is that additional percentage in tax collection represent? Approximately, ballpark ideas?
For
And the tax collector, we're running, over the 100%, and we might even run a little bit more. Is there a dollar value on what that's going to do to the bottom line at the end?
I haven't done those projections yet.
Well, right now, it's,
No, it's
we're showing
75,000.
75,000 over.
Yeah.
Which, we still have.
We have 4 months to go. Obviously, it's our lower collection times, so it'd be hard to tell at this point.
My recollection from the days on the previous, another board, Mary Jane usually starts to show us how much was collected in each of those last 3 months of the fiscal
Correct,
year.
after March,
After
yes.
March.
Yeah, I just didn't know
anticipate-
if it was some, $500,000 that we're
I don't
running.
think it's going to be that big.
No,
Right.
I doubt at this point that it would. We're only 75,000 over at this point.
Right, and there's always a correlation between the current year's taxes and the prior year's taxes. We typically run under current year, or close to it, so.
And that second payment timing's all gonna play into it.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, they're already in. So they're already in. All of it's already in here.
Anything further on revenue? All right, expenses.
Don't have a lot to talk about on expenses. Almost all of our departments are running, right where they should be at this point. A couple of them we've discussed a couple of times already, so I wasn't going to speak to them again. The only one I really wanted to talk about was the debt. You'll see that we are over budget by $735,672. That is our budgeted use of assigned fund balance that we brought in from our proceeds from bonding. That as those proceeds come in, we assign them for use to go against our debt. That is the amount that we had budgeted to use from there, minus a slight overestimate for the final Guilford High School bond. If you look in the detail, I think our estimate was about $11,000 higher than the actual bond amount. Obviously, that's an estimate when we're putting the budget together. So that netted to the $735,000 that we would anticipate bringing in from fund balance, as like I said, as budgeted. Overall, we're at 77.2% spent on the town side, and like I said, all the departments seem to be doing very well at this time of year. Unless you have any other specific questions.
Good.
I can
That
hear it too.
humming
Yeah,
means-
I hear the humming.
Sounds like a ballast, doesn't it?
Could be.
We good on expenses?
Yeah.
Good.
All right, any medical? Another good month?
Well, slightly higher than last month. We are lower than our budgeted expenses, and so that's attributing to our increase in fund balance. So last year, you'll see if you look over at the other columns, we had a large jump in March. So we'll be watching for that again this year. Obviously, all because of the HSA. This is our first full year that we're dealing with the HSA for the watching it for the Board of Ed. And next year will be another challenge on our end to see how that goes. But as you can see, our catastrophic claims that doubled at this time. We're still below our premium by $855,000. But we do have 4 more months to go, and as we move forward, that's when we start to see these jumps. Overall, our revenue is tracking very favorably, pretty much on budget. But overall, I am still showing an estimated fund balance at the end of the year of $4.1 million.
I anticipate this evening's Board of Finance meeting will get queried again about the stop loss, as that was a topic of discussion during the budget.
Right.
Are we prepared? Do we have a statement or a recommendation from, is it H.D. Seeger?
Yeah, it's from
It's Millman, I'm sorry. Do we have that in writing, or is that just a verbal?
We're supposed to have it by tonight, so I should have it by tonight.
All right. And again, I think the concern is, taking 1 year is a dangerous precedent, particularly on an item where
Especially this time of the year.
this time of year it has been, historically, this has been a beneficial program to us now.
And the way it's run, and the way it's structured has worked for us.
Yeah.
Oh, we jacked the
Right.
stop loss a few years back.
Right.
So their recommendation that we don't have in writing yet at this point in time is to hold?
To hold at this
Yes.
point. Yeah. Mitch.
Yeah, I think that's prudent. I mean, it's easy to jump on an opportunity and come back and launch it.
Right.
Good morning. Yes, I've had discussions with Steve May at Milliman, who's our consultant on medical. And basically what he has said, and he will put in writing for tonight's meeting, is that we are running where we should be. And he felt that if we were to change the amount, we would be increasing our risk. So it's a balancing act. And I think that he was not suggesting that we increase our risk. It's been running well for us. We've got more stability, and we've got, I think at this point, 4 or 5 individuals that have exceeded the stop loss, and we're only, that's only as of February states.
What is the downside of changing the stop loss more aggressively, more actively, more often? I mean, how often can we change the stop loss?
We can change it each year.
Yeah,
It's
so
an
it's
annual
annual.
contract.
So any change we make would be a potential risk for next year.
Right, we're only talking about next year. We're
So
only
it
talking
isn't
about next year's
something you
budget.
can work every 3 months
No.
or every 6
No.
months.
No,
or
it's
anything
not.
like that.
It's part
So
of-
you set the policy and
Right. So right now, our stop loss is $150,000. If any individual account hits $150,000, any medical bills over that are assumed by the insurance for that, and that's why that's the stop.
I don't know if you have it available, and I'm sure Steve might, is just have, like a 5-year history of where our stop loss fell. I know that's what we had when we changed it
Right.
last time, and it was almost a non-decision, although we still have to think it
Yeah.
through.
For the last couple of years, we've done very well. Of course, the more we exceed it, the more our rate goes up the
Well,
following
I
year.
was going to suggest the data is always a valuable thing to have. So if we have, say, 5 years worth of history in terms of what the stop loss threshold is, the premium for each year, and then the amount that was covered as a result of it. I think if we have a 5-year trend on that,
The other number that, I don't know if it is readily available or not, but I remember we did have it, is the aging of our employees.
In terms of,
Like-
Average, because they have a number that the actuaries use, I don't know if that's available.
I don't know if it is yet.
I don't want to know the number as much as I would like, I think it's valuable to know if it has changed dramatically or not.
I'm not sure we can get that by tonight, but I
And
mean.
I'm not sure if that has any bearing on your
Be-
catastrophic
Just a
claims,
judgment,
because it's.
just a judgment. Of course, of course.
Because, I was going to say, also because we're not just dealing with employees, we're dealing with the families. So you're looking at a lot of numbers. It's not just the age of the employee, but you're looking at, anyone of childbearing age, any, premature children.
Yeah, I don't know if the
That's-
number was strictly age. I think it was some measurement that they had of
Okay.
the population.
I can look into that. I don't recall that, but I can look into that too.
Well, I'm sure they could come up with an average age of the covered lives, right?
Yeah.
For those individual years. I would think so.
Just more information, but easier
Exactly.
decision making.
Exactly. Is there a chance to get that together for this evening?
Getting the 5-year trending,
Yeah.
probably I can get that. Getting the age, I doubt it.
That's fine.
So at what point would we make that decision for July 1st? I mean, can that happen at the last minute, or do we
Well, I
have to lock
think
in?
this decision, I won't say the decision's been made that it can't be changed, but we are budgeting basically based on the same $150,000 stop loss, which was recommended to us. And then that's how we budget it. And then, as you recall, in the budget meetings, the question came up
Yes.
about the stop loss. And that's, legitimate question, and we're certainly looking into it. But after speaking with our representative, it sounds like he looked at it, got back to me verbally and said, I think you're right where you should be. Anything to change that is going to take on more risk for the town. Yes, it's like any other investment, if you will. We could
And for
win,
insurance
we could
as well.
lose, and it's insurance risk, and he was not recommend. That's why we have stop loss.
Of course.
That's why it's there in the first place, is to reduce the risk. Without stop loss, we're fully self-insured, so we're going to pay every dollar, no matter what it costs, and the stop loss puts limits on that to protect us.
So changing the stop loss coverage, thereby reducing premiums by increasing it, would that result in a re-estimation of the employee medical cost in the aggregate?
Yes.
Okay.
So some form or fashion. I can't tell you which way that would go, but I think
Right.
it would
Well, that-
definitely.
That would probably be good data to have as we go through the next couple of months to make a determination. So I don't know whether that would be available today or not. Probably
what to
not.
do.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch.
No problem.
Anything on special fund warrants? Anything on regular warrants? Or weekly warrants? No?
We have one on weekly warrants, just
Okay.
curiosity. I don't remember what it is. The 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth item down, a withdrawal agreement, a payment for a withdrawal agreement on on one of the pension plans on Teamsters. What is that?
The Teamsters, the Public Works folks are not covered by the town's pension plan. And when we established, Charlie, you'll be here, see if I
I'll
got
let
this
you
right.
explain.
When we moved the pension coverage from the Guilford Employees Association to the Teamsters pension, there was a buyout. They literally had to transfer the assets that were related to the pension contributions and the actual revenue associated with them. And there was a series of how many years, Mitch?
Is it 25? Yeah, 25 years.
Oh, good, yeah, Mitch.
Come back
again. Yeah.
Yeah, there's what Matt has said is correct, but there was also an additional buyout, if you will, during the last contract negotiations. I think it's going to last about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. What happened was the Teamsters, as Matt has indicated, are on a separate pension plan. It's through the Teamsters International. That particular pension plan was deemed to be in critical condition. And that's deemed by the Teamsters themselves and their audits and all that other that goes with it. So we moved the Teamsters to a different plan throughout in the Teamsters system. But in order to do that, there was a buyout of the old pension. Now, overall, there's cost to having the people who are in the Public Works Department in this pension, but the buyout was part of what we have to pay for 25 years to get out of one plan and into a less expensive plan. So in the long run, it is a better move for everyone involved, including our employees and the town, because we are responsible for the amount that's levied to us each year,
By-
being in that. And Charles was
It
in that.
wasn't just by law, we were responsible for the shortfall of previous years of the Teamsters pension. By this buyout, it stopped at that point in time any future liability and put us into another Teamster pension
Okay.
plan that started clean and was hopefully not going to develop the shortfalls that the previous one did. But we stopped our
I
liability
see.
with an agreed amount for future liability of the shortfalls that they were experiencing.
In our current
By
expense,
law, we had to do something about it.
in our current agreement, our costs are less per employee now than they were. But it's a long, it's a long and expensive process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. All right. Anything else? Jane, anything else from you? Do you,
Not on those
I don't know. Okay.
yet. I've got other things.
All right. Item 4.2. I don't. We don't need to do that because we took care of the budget item last Friday, right? Item 4.3. Discuss and take possible action on binding resolutions prepared by bond counsel. We have those. These have been reviewed by town council, prepared by bond council, and reviewed by town council for the appropriateness. And is there a motion to approve those? If you would indulge me in waiving the reading of said.
It's only 8 pages.
This is
So these are going to be part of this budget.
yeah.
We could pass these resolutions before the budget's passed.
This is the resolution
for
that
the
sends
capital.
them to referendum. So
Yeah,
you're,
bonding okay.
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, yeah.
I
This
thought-
is the bonding
I thought we were-
this is the bonding authorization, not the
Seeking
bonding
author-
itself.
Okay.
Correct. Seeking authorization.
So let me put it this way: is there a motion
Yes. So
recommending appropriate?
I'd like to second that.
Further discussion.
Just note that it sets the the public hearing,
Okay.
it sets the date of the budget hearing, the public hearing, the
And then-
town meeting, and ultimately
could
the
be effective.
referendum.
Well, I'm sorry.
Correct. It's all of that.
It's more than just the mechanics, though. It's our recommendation of the appropriation of
Correct.
$3,650,000 for upgrades to failing systems or systems that some would say have already failed.
Right.
It's very important. It was disappointing to me that one member of the Board of Finance voted against this.
I agree.
I felt that reflected a lack of understanding of the situation.
Right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so
I agree.
the first motion is the approval of the bonding resolutions and also sending those to planning and zoning for referral. So that's your first motion,
Okay.
approval of the resolutions themselves.
Charlie moved.
Yeah.
And seconded.
Second.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None. Motion passes.
So the second part to that, it's all in the one big resolution that you have under item 3. The second part is to actually take action on the town budget meeting and ultimately the budget referendum
4.4.
for the budget and for the bond authorizations, all included.
In that, all in one. So we
all
just
in
approved it. We just approved it all
Correct.
in one. So 4.4 is done as well. Thank you.
Oh, you did it all in one. Okay, that's fine.
Did it all in one?
Yep.
Okay, so you don't need another motion?
No, we don't.
Okay, good.
4.5, discuss and take possible action on the investment policy. Mary Jane, thank you very much for pulling this together as a result of a series of discussions related to maximizing the interest income on our deposits. Mary Jane has been working to pull together a policy. In terms of mechanics, at one point, the town had a separate town treasurer.
Brought that up, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what were the mechanics? Okay, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, and by charter, the treasurer was responsible for making those investments decisions. Several years ago, I think the last charter revision, that responsibility, the treasurer position was eliminated, but the responsibilities of treasurer were rolled into the finance director. And short of having a formal policy in place, we've traditionally been very conservative in our investments on our cash on hand. I think predominantly in the state fund, STIF, state
Short-term investment fund.
short-term investment fund.
It's an unfortunate acronym.
I know.
You don't want to
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want to get any of those.
That's right. And typically has not been very high on the yield curve. And there have been some discussions of late in terms of how do we maximize interest income on our deposits with other potential vehicles. So this is our attempt to pull together a policy that says what is acceptable risk, what is not acceptable risk, where can the monies be placed legally by state statute, and what risks are associated with those. So this is step one, so I'd suggest that we all have a chance to take a look at this, and we'll be weighing in on it at a future point in terms of accepting it.
As an initial comment, though, I am very supportive of the prioritize safety, liquidity, and yield, and
Yeah,
I really
I was gonna
support
say
safety being
Yeah.
the number one
Sure.
priority because
Yeah.
Right.
Besides yourself, who worked on this?
Just me?
Just you?
So this will be shared with the Board of Finance this evening for their review and
As a first
consideration. And I think that's largely a courtesy because, as I said, the responsibility falls with this board because the
I would want to have it reviewed by
Council,
town council and
Absolutely. Those steps would all be taken no matter what. I brought it to the board's attention a little sooner than I had anticipated, only because of discussions that we've been having. I was going to wait till after the budget process so that we could have something else to discuss, but
is there any other sign off or at least review available regarding state statutes and that type of thing? Any
well, that would be our town council.
well, I'm thinking more somebody with the financial expertise. I mean, yes, she ought to review it for statutes and that type of thing. I'm just wondering from a purely financial perspective, is there anyone?
I would think we might want to run it by OMB just for
Or
appropriateness.
COG or somebody might have
Yeah,
some
either-
experts, just like we have insurance experts.
CCM.
Yeah, something like that. See
CCM.
what other sources are
mean sort of
available.
a
I know
financial
you brought
expert.
this together quickly, and you said you did it yourself, and I compliment you, and I'm glad you did it. But, there's no reason, it's not as if we have to do this today.
No.
So, getting a little more, I call it spreading the blame. Just get another set of eyes. It's as simple as that. And the legal eyes are very important, but financial eyes, I think, are too.
I just want to clarify that I didn't put the words to paper on my own. I did use, other towns' policies
Yeah.
as a guide. So I know that this is what other towns, a similar document is with other towns.
And that's a good thing, but that
Correct.
doesn't mean
I'm
it's
not saying
correct.
it. No. I'm not saying. That's not the point I was trying to make. The point I was
Okay.
trying to make is that I didn't come up with it.
She's trying to get rid of the blame already.
I am
It
spreading
was
the
Bristol.
blame. That's right.
It was
I would
Bristol.
expect that you would have used other models to do this. Why not?
Yes, it made the process.
You're not
a lot
reinventing the wheel,
Right.
I'm sure. other-
And I will confirm that Bristol is a pretty good example to use. The gentleman who's a former finance director at Bristol is one of CCM's go-to guys in terms of municipal finance, education. He is the
He
guy.
does trainings.
Yeah.
He is
Yeah,
the guy.
I know where to go for help.
All right, well,
The current finance director is somebody I know very well, so
Yeah. So, but I don't think it hurts to get the.
absolutely,
have
that's
a way
why
in and writing it,
this is an absolutely first run through just to put something on the table at this point.
This may be in the body and I missed it, but do you have a sentence that says this will be periodically, like annually reviewed or reaffirmed or anything to that effect? Because this is the first time we've had one, right?
Yeah, it says the town's investment policy shall be adopted and by resolution of the Town of Guilford Board of Finance.
It does say, yeah.
which is how others are done. You can make that change.
I wondered
The
that.
policy shall be reviewed annually, and any modifications made thereto must be approved by the Board of Finance. If you prefer to come Board of Selectmen, we can certainly make that
Well,
change.
first let's find out, as Charlie had said,
If that's
legally
Yeah.
what the process is.
I know.
I have
in
no
pri-
problem, which board does the final thing. I think both boards should be involved.
Exactly.
It could be
Whether
both.
it's a recommendation either direction, that's not as important to me as everybody's eyes on it, so that,
Correct. But yes, regardless of how we word that sentence with which board, that is in there.
Good.
So this addresses how funds are to be invested and but not the amount, which has come up recently in conversation about the amount that should be invested.
Correct.
versus
I'm working on
liquid.
a separate presentation regarding collateralization and FDIC limits and what the towns can do and how we're the amount of risk we have with the money we have in there and how we're protected currently. With that, different banks have different collateralization. Webster is helping, has already submitted a letter showing their collateralization. I think I sent that to you, Matt, right? I did have Webster give us something that showed the protection that we have, but I'm working on that as a separate presentation.
Thanks.
So that we can put all of it together and make the right decisions.
Right, and as Charlie talked about earlier, the three, the drivers, safety,
safety.
liquidity, and yield, and liquidity just does talk to how much
Sure.
cash we need to keep on hand. Because there
it
were some,
does spell out which funds, though. Do you think that's limiting by spelling out which funds fall under this policy?
Underwear, so just-
Under
We
scope.
have general fund, special fund, capital, scope, under scope. I mean, by naming them, are we, I don't know if there
Well,
is.
the last bullet there gives kind of a
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, there.
permission to go further.
The intent of that area is just to be clear what type of funds we have. These are all
clear
outlined
but
through
not
GF.
necessarily limiting?
These are all our types of funds that are allowable under GASB. So when you look at our audit, all of our dollars are in one of these types of funds. These are auditing terms as opposed to, they're not the names of our particular funds, they are classifications of funds within GASB.
Okay, part of what's driving this creation of this, because I know we already had it in the works, is a discussion about special funds of Park and Rec and Board of Ed and that type of thing. And that's,
They would all be
when
included
people say
in this.
fund, okay.
Well, there's an exception in the last paragraph of that section, except for cash and certain restricted and special funds. So it allows, I think, flexibility if it's not appropriate for a particular fund for some
Correct,
reason.
we may have some type of trust fund that is managed solely by a particular entity. Therefore, we wouldn't have the ability to invest those funds any way other than the trust would tell us. So that's just one example. But all the funds, every dollar we have that we are able to invest at this moment is identified in one of
Yes.
these classifications.
and this policy would apply to all of those
Correct.
dollars. Right?
Well, okay, to the point you just made then, at this moment, and that's why I just want to make sure that,
That's
and
why.
again, we're getting into the weeds here,
But pretty much any fund that you would, hard pressed to find a fund that you would add that wouldn't fall into one of these GASB classifications.
that's the point. We had talked about setting up funds
Well,
for sidewalks.
yeah,
Correct, which is why I didn't specifically list the funds.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We
Okay.
may have one now that, we may close next year and have something different.
And
So
vice versa.
instead of
Okay.
naming the funds, these are the classifications.
Okay.
And not to belabor the point, you could probably get away with just the first sentence.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Doesn't
Well,
change
that's
the
what
meaning
you
to
get
take
worried
it
about
out,
when you
yeah.
start naming, they become
Get so
exclusionary.
prescriptive, that's right.
Again, all up for discussion.
Discussion, good.
and
That's why I said we're getting into the
editing
weeds.
and-
Yeah.
I'd rather give you more and have us take out than miss something. So hopefully I haven't missed anything. opinions.
All right. And then I think the question, one other question we need the legal to weigh in on is, whose policy is this?
Sure.
All right.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. All right. Item 5. 5.1, discuss and take possible action on award of bid number 6-1718, wiring upgrades for Guilford Public Schools. Kevin Mitchell, you want to come up and just tell us a little bit about it? Yeah.
All right, so this project is going to be all 6 of the schools below the high school. So we're looking at doing new fiber backbones in all those locations, and then at A.W. Cox and Guilford Lakes, we're going to put in some copper cabling to support a new wireless network setup.
Okay.
So we went out to bid. I think I provided the bid results.
The bid specs for everything.
And so the project is split into, there's an equipment portion, which is the routing gear to get the network lit up,
Yeah.
and a wiring piece. So we selected different vendors for each of those because of cost.
Right.
So the equipment one's pretty straightforward. The parts are, there was no substitutions there. The low bid was CDWG at $36,669. And I've done extensive work with them, so I trust that they'll come through with that. The other vendor is JKS Systems of South Windsor. Their bid was quite low, comparable, when you compare them to the other bids that came in. So I did a scope review with.
Scanned sideways.
Exactly.
It's a tough sheet to read.
Well, no. They don't scan well into these documents. They don't scan well into the landscape. We're still trying to figure that piece out.
So I did a scope review with Andy from JKS Systems. He's confident in his number. He had all the parts and pieces in the project. I checked references from the town of Saybrook and also Cornell University, and both of those were stellar, pretty much. They said this company does really good work, so we were going to give them a shot. Their total was $33,545.
Okay.
The grand total of the project is $70,000. The exact here. Let's see, $70,214. This is also an E-ratable project, which
Good,
means
that
we
was
can
my
get
question.
reimbursed from the federal government for a portion of this. That'll be 40%. So we're looking at, with a total of $70,000, we're going to get back about $30,000.
Excellent. Excellent. Good. Any other questions? All right. I think we need to award this in 2 parts, right? Is there 2 different bid numbers? Or no? No, it's all one bid, right?
Yeah. Yep. One bid, 2 vendors.
1 bid, 2 vendors. All right. Is there a motion to award bid number 6-1718, Part 1, cabling to JKS Systems of South Windsor, Connecticut for $33,545, and Part 2, the network equipment to CDW Government, LLC of Vernon Hills, Illinois, for $36,669.
So moved.
A second. Any further questions? No. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, none. Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for covering the piece on the E-rate.
That's a good piece.
That is a nice piece. It's a nice piece of change, which heretofore wasn't available on wiring and that kind of hardware because it wasn't classified.
No, this is the first time we're able to do that.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was not originally classified as priority 1. It was all priority 2 stuff, right? A little history from my previous life.
There was never any priority 2 money though for the town.
Yeah, we never got near the priority 2 stuff. You're right. Thank you very much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Item 6, 6.1, consider and take possible action to award RFP 2-1718, feasibility study for affordable housing development, Woodruff driveway property. George, how are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good to hear. So,
I'm sorry.
No problem. All right, I think pretty much everyone's familiar. This is the grant opportunity we had, and George is going to walk us through. Of course, Sandy's part of that committee as well.
I might
so
be chiming in,
You
but
might.
we'll
we'll
let George begin.
You got it.
By way of brief history, you've expressed interest in pursuing affordable housing in Guilford. You've focused a little bit more on areas that are supported by public transit. We've secured a grant from the Department of Housing to look at sites that might be suitable for affordable housing that have access to public transit. We discovered a number of them, one of which was owned by the town. You authorized a second grant application to do a quote-unquote feasibility study to look further detail at the potential for developing that property for affordable housing. We secured the grant. $50,000 was authorized by the state. We did an RFP, RFQ through our normal processes. The RFP was successful in that we received 13 proposals. The committee that you appointed to help implement this project through a subcommittee reviewed those 13 proposals, identified 3 that they shortlisted. The full committee interviewed 3 proposers on Friday, this past Friday. Found all 3 of them to be very qualified, and after some discussion, agreed to recommend to you one of those proposers. That's the one that you have a summary of some of their material. The project team led by Patrick Wynn Architects of New Haven. Karen Patrick is also a resident of Guilford and formerly chairman of the Design Review Committee. The project team that was assembled under Patrick Wynn Architects is shown on page 2 of this document. Includes subcontractors, all highly qualified. A number of them were part of the interview. And their proposal in terms of dollars is shown on this final document in your packet, $48,800, which is under the grant amount. The grant amount was known to all of the proposers. So the committee, by way of its vote on Friday, is recommending that you authorize First Selectman to negotiate and enter into contract with Patricon pursuant to this RFP, RFQ.
All 3 firms that we interviewed, the finalists, had connections to Guilford in either people from the firms lived in Guilford or people connected with the firms had done work in Guilford. So we, plus they met the bottom line criteria that we needed any firm, whether they had Guilford connections or not, to meet. And it was hard because they were really 3 excellent firms, but after some heated discussion, we picked this firm, and we feel confident about their capability to come through in both quality and timeliness. We are moving. It's taken years to get to this, but now we are trying to go a little faster than we had.
By heated, I don't think Sandy meant that we disagreed.
No.
It was enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Energetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, we were 100%
Yes.
in agreement that Patricon was our first choice.
And by the last note on the last page where it says all reimbursables are inclusive, so that means this is not to exceed this number.
Correct.
Correct.
Great.
Just a question on the project team. How do these all play together in terms of their development? This Housing Enterprises.
Housing Enterprises is a consultant to the project team. David Berto is an expert in state and federal funding programs, and that information and that expertise will be invaluable in determining whether we have a feasible project or not.
Okay.
So that's his role.
Gotcha. And so what is the deliverable from
Well,
Patricon?
there'll be a report and a plan.
Right.
The process is probably more important than the actual document. The first step in the process will be to look at the physical feasibility issues, sewage disposal, environmental impact, et cetera. If that continues to test positively, the next step will be to develop some hypothetical and preliminary plans. That if that continues to look favorable, the final product will be a determination that yes, this project looks to be feasible in terms of interest to potential developers. The final version of that will be round 3 of all this, when we solicit proposals, subject to your approval, from actual developers to develop a project pursuant to what we come up with through the feasibility study. The feasibility study will also involve a review of the plans by neighbors and interested public, so that we make sure we have something that the community agrees with and finds acceptable. But deliverable in the narrowest way will be a report and a set of plans and drawings, not to construct anything, but so that people can see what it looks like, how many units are we talking about, how many bedrooms, what's the physical layout. Will be part of that will be an affordability plan, meaning at least preliminarily what kinds of costs are associated with the development of this, what kind of rents are likely to be charged, given what we know about state and federal funding, that sort of thing.
And just as a little other background to this, Guilford has led initiatives in affordable housing, but it was reinvigorated by a study that was performed by the Guilford Foundation now about 4 years ago, which led to, and also with a presentation from Partnerships for Strong Communities, which was presented to the town also about 4 years ago. And then the committee on which I serve, Housing for Economic Development Plan Committee, was formed. And then, as George said, the first grant was applied for and gotten to identify properties near transportation centers that could potentially work for either not-for-profit or for-profit developers. During that time, the Committee for Housing, it's a strong name, a long name, Housing for Economic Development Plan Committee, in conjunction with the newly revived Guilford Interfaith Housing Initiative, plus the Guilford Foundation, did a number of public meetings so people could ask questions and understand kind of what the thoughts were behind this. Because, as I said, Guilford has done it in the past, but there was a little time lapse between the last time something like this happened and then this initiative. So when I said we were moving fast, only in that it's been 4 years of creating building blocks. So I just wanted to give that background. And we will be having, again, with those agencies I just mentioned, we'll be having not only reaching out to the near neighbors, but to any Guilford resident who has a question. We'll be having open meetings very shortly to address any concerns, compliments, questions regarding this.
So at the point of the feasibility results or study or whatever, that's when we'll have a better feel of the number of potential units.
We'll know almost exactly how many
But,
units.
yeah, we haven't gotten to this point without having some inclination that whatever number of units fit on this site will seriously address the concerns about affordable housing in Guilford. Is that accurate?
It will make an impact.
Right, there will be always more people.
Of course,
Looking for
but
this
the
that
number
we
will
can
be
provide.
significant enough to
Yeah,
have
and it will also be, we hope, a model for other developments around the town. Because the affordableness of the current 3 developments that we have are for 55 and older, which is very worthy, but we're also looking for, there's also an audience of folks under 55 that meet the criteria for affordable housing as well.
The size of the project in terms of number of units is a very interesting variable in question. I mean, in one sense, even if we only produce 1 unit, that's good. But there's also a threshold of feasibility, which we're learning about. There needs to be a certain number of them just
For
to make it
developers to
feasible
be
for the
interested.
developer. And obviously, the more affordable units we can create, the better. On the other hand, we don't want it to be so big that it has an adverse impact on the neighborhood, so that there's a balancing between how big and how small and what actually fits on the site. All of those things need to kind of work together to make a real project.
Yeah, it's a very practical experience. I mean, I obviously live up the street from the last development on Wild Rose, and that started off 3 times bigger than what it eventually ended up. And
Right.
what eventually ended up seems to be almost the ideal scenario. It just seems to work for the neighborhood and for the residents. But my other concern about impact on neighborhood and that type of thing, of course, that's got to be addressed. But I was concerned that it's substantial effort, and I think Sandy addressed it, that, we're not doing all of this, for a unit. We're doing this. This is going to be a substantial development, I assume.
We hope
That's the hope.
We hope, yes. This is a challenging site, and we're hearing more and more about that from even the preliminary
But I thought it
discussions.
was, okay, because of probably environmental issues.
Environmental, wetlands,
Yeah,
flood. Those,
The old parking lot issue.
if it were easy to develop, it would have been developed long before the town acquired it, in all likelihood. So there are some challenges, and
It will be an aesthetic improvement for the entire neighborhood if we can pull it off, but,
Well, it could be quite the home run.
Yeah.
Because,
but the property
proximity to
is,
downtown.
is large, but not all of it is able to be, built upon, so that's what we're gonna find out for sure.
What's the timing? When do you expect to receive the report?
I think we're talking about a fairly short period of time, like in the order of months.
The
to get
3
through this.
finalists all said they could start today if they got the okay with the tests and everything else that needs to be done.
It's exciting.
Yes.
Stay tuned. So what do you need from us today?
We need to award the bid and also allow the first selectman to enter into contract negotiations.
Right. Well, I move all of that.
You do? Thank you.
Second.
Tracy, make it work.
Is there any further questions? Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusal? George, thank you very much. Look forward to this hearing more about this project. Item 7. Rick, want to come on up? We've got 2 items. Discussion takes possible action to waive bidding, if necessary, and approve consultant services for new Guilford High School synthetic turf field to analyze failure conditions, diagnose cause of a failure, and develop remedial scope to restore field for play.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I brought a couple of pictures that just show you part of what we're talking about there, and I can explain what they are. So this is the new synthetic turf field at the high school. It was completed in December of 2016. It was used last year. And then in mid-January, Parks crew was up there just doing some work in the air, and they noticed the separation. So the one you're holding there, that is separated about 4 inches. So underneath it, that white it's called a shock pad. It's like a styrofoam pad. It's put together almost like puzzle pieces, kind of interlocking sort of, and it's pulling apart. It's around the 30-yard line on this west end of the field, and the same area on the south end, on the east end of the field. It's kind of interesting. It's almost the same place on both ends of the field. The worst one, though, is the one that's there. There's also the whole south sideline perpendicular to that. There's some separation. And so we've met out there with the installers, the shock pad company, the carpet company. We've been out there with all of them, and everyone's scratching their heads. They've said they've never seen this, don't know what's happening. So the field committee talked about it, and we talked to Jeff D'Onofrio, and his recommendation was that we seek an independent consultant to determine the cause of this, and to look at everything from design to materials, test the materials, and see what's happening there. But it is closed now. The gates are locked. Signs on the fence, gates there that's closed, and the high school is aware of it. They can't use it this spring, and youth sports are aware of it. I met with them and told them that we've got to look at other alternate places for this spring anyway. So it's a perplexing situation. So we solicited sent requests for proposals to 7 different firms, and we got 3 back. And the after evaluating the references and the proposals and who seemed to have a really grasp on what we need to get done, Paul Schmidt and Jeff D'Onofrio and I spoke on Thursday, I think it was, and we would like to recommend Castle and Booz Associates. There was another an individual from Ohio that was one of the firms that was an individual, but he's one of the people that responded to the quotes, and there was a company out of Kentucky. But for a lot of reasons, we thought Castle Booz, they're right here in, I believe, New Britain, they're in Connecticut. The references are all very strong. They seem to have the best grasp on what needs to be done, best ability to address it. You know, they're also designers, so they can look at the design, they can look at the installation, they can look at send the materials out for testing. And so for all those reasons, it was unanimous. We thought that Castle Booz Associates was the best company to go with for this. The cost would be up to $40,000, and a lot of that depends on material testing. They'd have to send that out to an independent lab, and we don't know fully what that cost is yet, but we're confident it won't be more than $40,000, probably less. But the goal is to get it done, get someone who can really determine what is the cause of this. And then we'll be coming back later, though. This is just for the diagnostic part of it, find out what is it that caused it. Then we're going to require them to write specifications. What do they have to do to fix it? And then, all these are under warranty, by the way. The carpet's under warranty for 8 years. The shock pad for 25 years. So the repairs.
Is there anything that we might have done in building this that might have voided the warranty, or is that what the engineers are going to find out?
They're going to have to find that out.
That's it.
Yeah.
So if it's all under warranty and obviously it's defective, why is it
Why
up
are
to
we
us
doing it,
to do this and pay for this?
Well, Jeff D'Onofrio sent a letter to the three parties, the carpet company, the shock pad company, and the installer, for them to also try to determine what the cause is. We know what's going to happen. They're going to, it's guaranteed that's going to happen. And so Jeff also recommended, let's do a parallel thing. Let's get our own independent consultant to look at this and determine what the cause was. What's the reason for failure? Is it the material? Is it the design? We don't know. But that's why we want to get a company that can determine that. And also, when these other groups come with their recommendation, what they think happened, somebody who knows this stuff and is independent is going to have to look at it and say, well, yeah, we think that's right, or no, it isn't. This is what we got to do. So the recommendation was we do a parallel thing at the same time. And then
Is
have
this
for
parallel cost going to be under the warranty?
Potentially.
Right.
So it's,
If it turns out to be in our favor, if the analysis turns out to be that it was nothing that we did, that it was one of the other parties, then the expectation is that we recover those costs as a result of it. And that's based on Donna
And
Frio's
also the-
recommendation and previous experience in doing these things.
and also the additional funds could be recovered as well?
Yes.
So if we don't do this parallel process and just let the alternative play out, we might end up doing this anyways, but we might not. So we will have lost time.
Right.
How much time?
And time is important because it's a field that nobody can use right now.
Right.
But I will say that when we met with the contractors and all the parties involved at one point, one of them said, "Well, we could patch it," and I said, "We don't want the expedient thing. We don't want to get it done so they can use it this spring. We want it done so it's done right and it doesn't happen again. Because who knows? We don't know what happened, and we don't want to see this again next year. So whatever the fix is, we want it to be done right and it's fixed, and we're
Do you
done with
think,
it."
assuming it all goes ideally, will the warranty reset?
Good question. We'd have to look into it. I don't know. I mean, we would have lost maybe, we're 1 year into it.
In lieu of a patch,
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're gonna have to put a new either base and or carpet on now, and or both. So, it'll be 2 years at that point, so I would assume that it'd be reset in the ideal situation.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, Charlie. There's maybe something Jeff can help us answer. Jeff D'Onofrio?
In either case, we need to be armed with a set of facts that we have
Yeah.
determined, as opposed to relying on three independent, either design contractors or manufacturers, who may not necessarily have the same motivation to find out what we are, what the real story is.
Did you, by any chance, has this happened to any other synthetic turf field in the 50 states?
Well, actually, Bristol has two fields that are similar. Not all fields have the shock pad like the stadium field, the older field. That's a whole different process. There's no shock pad. Bristol has the common denominator is a shock pad and the sand infill. There's different carpet, different installer, but they had it's a little different. It was pulling away from the edges, like where it was anchored around the edges of the field. It started pulling away. Similar, but a little different. But it's the only other one that we heard of in Connecticut. I heard it up at Holyoke. There may be a similar situation. So other than that, I don't know how many. I mean, I'm not aware nationally of any others. There may be. I just don't know.
Okay, what do you need from us?
Do we have a definitive dollar figure? Is it 40,000 we're going to use?
40,000, yeah.
Not to exceed?
Correct.
All right.
And the waiving of bidding,
Authorize
is that timing issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just for the record, Paul Schmidt, who's chairman of the Standing Fields Committee, is a principal in a civil engineering firm of his own, and he's been the primary point person for the Standing Building Committee, and has participated in the interviews with those three firms, and it is his recommendation as well that we move forward. So,
Thanks, Brad.
Charlie, you got a queried look on your face.
No, I just, the way bidding issue, that's all.
And we also had Jeff D'Onofrio was part of those discussions. as well.
Jeff recommended going this direction.
Our legal counsel.
Yeah. Yeah, he was part of the conversation last week.
So just to understand the timing, we're not going to be using it this spring, that's a given. What are we hoping to be able to do by running this parallel?
Getting ready for the fall.
So if we don't do this, it's
We'll lose the fall
If-
season.
if we do this, we might get a fix in time for the fall.
Correct.
Otherwise,
Right.
it's out.
Again, we don't know what the whole fix is, and I mean, the worst case scenario is ripping all of it up and putting it back down. That would be a pretty big process if that has to get done, but
If the worst case scenario happened, would we be able to meet the fall?
I would think that probably depends on what the cause is. If the cause is structural
That's
underneath
said
the,
worst case. I mean, worst case, sounds like your response is maybe not.
I don't know, because again, we don't know what caused it. I mean, it's an exaggeration, almost like a mini earthquake. I mean, you're out there and suddenly there's these things pulled apart, and not only the shock pad where I mentioned they put together like a seam, like a puzzle sort of. There are other sections of the field, the whole south sideline, where it ripped right through the shock pad, not at the seam, but like through the middle of it. And when we were out there, these companies said this had to be a tremendous amount of force that caused this. And we don't plow it. That's the first thing they asked. Do you plow this field? I said, no, we do not plow it. Never going to plow it. I checked with Cliff, make sure the school system didn't plow. Nobody plowed it. Nobody's on any kind of vehicle like that. No helicopters landed on it, and it just pulled apart.
one of the concerns is obviously some kind of settling underneath, right?
Right.
So, okay, is there a motion to approve, to waive the bid and approve expenditure of up to $40,000 for the consultant services for, is it Castle Booze?
Yes.
Castle Booze.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
A second.
Any further questions or comments? My comment is, in order to protect ourselves, I think this is an investment we have to make with the anticipation that if it turns out to be the fault of one of the three parties, that we will recover these costs.
The option being to wait and allow it to play out first. Perhaps one of them will step forward and accept responsibility for it.
And then we might end up doing what we're doing today.
6 months from now.
We might, right.
So,
Just bite the bullet.
do it. Good. All right, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals? None. Item 7.2, consider and take possible action on expansion of Nut Plains parking lot as an Eagle Scout project. Rick?
So I'm here representing Michael Kegel, he's the Eagle Scout, he's in school. So he put together this nice little chart that he presented to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Hopefully you can, I don't know if you can see him, Mike, but can you see me? I'm hiding here. So Nut Plains Park, when you're driving in, well, let me step back. The parking is, we need parking. You know, it's with the dog park there now. When there's lacrosse going on, it's pretty packed. And so, yeah, thanks, Ian. Everyone is. And so Michael Kegel, he was looking for an Eagle project, and this is one thing we talked about. And so when you're driving into Nut Plains Park, the dog park's on the right, and there's some sort of wooded areas and sort of off parking lot area on the left. It's basically mud and grass, pretty much. People have been parking there anyway. So it's this area right here. There's the dog park, and when you come in from Nut Plains Road, this is the area to the left as you're driving in. As I said, people I think have been parking there anyway, but it's just grass and kind of dirt and sort of muck. So his proposal is to dig it out, go down a foot, and then get rid of the dirt, bring in 9 inches of 2-inch stone, and then 3 inches of processed stone. Jim Portley met out there with Michael and me and gave him sort of guidance of what needs to be done there. It would create about 8 more parking spaces. No trees are coming down. There's a couple like little brush. I think he shows one somewhere here.
Left, far left.
Yeah. And it's like you know, it's a small ceiling. I told him no big trees. There are no big trees in there. They're farther back. We're not encroaching into the wooded area really at all. It's basically formalizing where people sort of park it anyway and just making it better. And I'm going to the Town Hall South group tomorrow for their approval of this, and then with their direction, we're probably going to be going to planning and zoning, which I asked George if we get on the schedule for I think it's April 4th. He's hoping to do this project mid-May. So he's kind of trying to line it up, you know, for his Eagle project. But it's a parking lot. I wanted to get approval from the board here, and then we'll go through the proper steps and get the other
about the
approvals.
cost.
The cost is about
I'm letting go.
okay. It's around $2,000, which we're going to cover that. We'll have funds to cover that to help them with it. And part of what they usually have to do some fundraising too as part of the Eagle project. But if he runs short of funds, the Parks and Rec Commission is committed that they'll help him out. We just think this is a worthy project, and it's good for him. You know, I have to say, I'm just totally amazed at the number of Eagle Scouts in Guilford. We have, I think this last year, we've had 9 just with Parks and Rec. I don't know any other project, but 9 that they're working with us on, and or proposed some working with us. And it's just amazing that many kids in Guilford get to that level. It's very, very impressive.
It's unfortunate Lou isn't here, former Scoutmaster, and
Yeah.
I think both of his boys were Eagle Scouts.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
excellent. I completely supportive of this project.
So
This is true.
what do you need from us?
I guess approval to move forward.
I think
pending,
we're,
P&Z approval.
Yep, that is exactly what we need, is allow for this project to take place, pending the planning and zoning approval of same. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? None? Motion carries. Thank you, Rick.
I'll let Michael know that you
Please,
approved it.
yeah, pass
Thank
along
you.
our appreciation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 8, discuss and take possible action on fair housing resolution for the town of Guilford. We may have Tracy pitch in here, but this is related to the Small Cities Grant. This is one of the steps that we have to abide by, and that we are, in fact, well, you can read the documentation. Lisa Lowe and Associates, our consultant for this project, who's been actively engaged with us. It seems like almost every day there's another document or form we need to pull together. Go ahead.
Just for the benefit of everybody watching, and just to remind us, this is to connect to the funding that we are have secured.
We have not secured.
We haven't secured it,
We
but-
are in the process of applying for a federal/state program, Small Cities Grant of $400,000, which will be used for municipal housing rehabilitation projects. Qualified homeowners in town meeting income thresholds and equity positions in their homes will be entitled to interest-free loans for rehabilitation of their property. Energy, windows, roofing, those kind of projects. Again, it's interest-free, and the loan is not repayable until such time as the property changes hands, changes ownership, at which time it gets put back into the same fund and would be available for other people to use going forward. So that. Thank you, Sandy, for that.
Thank you. And when will we know if we actually get that?
There are a couple of rounds to this. There's a preliminary indication, which we'll know probably by May to June timeframe, and then there's a secondary, which would be a little bit later in the summertime. The associate, Lisa Lowe and Associates, the consultant we're using to manage this process for us, both the application as well as the housing rehab projects themselves, has done these throughout the state. In fact, I took the opportunity to make some calls on their references. I think the town of Brookfield is now using them for the 8th Small Cities Grant. They find them to be very, very effective. So. And this is one of the policies that we need to have in place that says we abide by a fair housing policy. Charlie's moving it.
So,
We
so
endorse the policy, fair housing.
I'm just wondering, so we're resolving to endorse a fair housing policy. Is this the fair housing
This is it.
policy?
Yep.
Okay, the wording's confusing to
Yep.
me.
Yep.
A second.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? Hearing none. Motion carries. Item 9, 9.1, act on resignation from Hank Graver from the Marina Commission. Charlie, what's the wording?
With regret
With regret and appreciation.
and appreciation.
To Hank Graver, we accept your resignation from the Marina Commission. I've known Hank for a long time. He's been a tremendous volunteer in this community on multiple boards, and thank you for your service, Hank. 9.2 is to act on.
We have to vote on it?
Oh, yeah, we have to vote on that. That's right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Yeah, Charlie already had a
Charlie
motion.
did it.
Second.
Seconded.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, motion carries. 9.2, act on the appointment of David DeMayo to the Standing Building Committee to fill a vacancy for a term to expire June 17th, 2020.
So moved, and I'd like to note that, unaffiliated voter through the
Unaffiliated
Board of
voter.
Selectmen.
Right, and
Encourage
came in
that.
directly through the Board of Selectmen. And by the way, Dave DeMayo is the principal in a construction firm of note in the area. I believe it's Munger Construction. We'll give him a cheap shout out here. And I think he'll bring significant expertise to that board as
happy
well.
with
And I might add that I've had conversations with a couple of the board members who are thrilled that we are now at a full complement on
Yeah,
this
that's
team.
terrific, yeah.
Yeah.
Which only
work.
several months ago, we were down to 3 or 4 of them, so they are thrilled. So, is there a motion, Charlie's got the motion?
Second.
And seconded by Sue. Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 10, request for use of town property, 10.1, act on request from Closer to Free Ride to use the green September 8th, 2018 as a rest stop for its participants. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Second. Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 10.2, act on request from Guilford Art League to use the green to place a sign on the green advertising its art exhibit and sale taking place July 13th and 14th, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A second. Call the question. All in favor? We'll just go back and forth. Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Recusals? Hearing none. Motion carries. 10.3, act on request from the country school to place a sign on the green advertising its tour days taking place April 18th and 19th, 2018. The sign placement would be April 1st through April 15th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals. Hearing none, motion carries. 10.4, act on request from Keeping Society to place a sign on the green advertising its annual wine tasting taking place April 21st, 2018. Sign placement April 6th through April 20th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals. Hearing none, motion carries. Item 11, correspondence. Anybody have anything they want to add under correspondence? No? Committee reports? Okay, now, well, is the budget officially behind us, or do we have to wait till April 10th? Let's start
tonight,
thinking.
right?
Let's start thinking about it, okay?
Yeah.
So let's
Start thinking about it.
start thinking about it.
Well, you had one from the Housing for Economic
Yes,
Development.
that's right, we got one.
We
Sandy's
got
way ahead of
one
us
down
already.
way ahead.
She's all right. And does my ex officio role on the Board of Finance count?
No.
too? Thanks,
I
Charlie.
got a list of boards. I
I
can
know.
count if you're going to play that game.
Okay, old business. Just one piece. This afternoon at 2:00, we're having a kickoff implementation call for the ClearGov transparency software that we move forward with. This is I think I talked about this at one point earlier. We're engaged with this outfit called ClearGov.com. And the challenge immediately is for us to get all of the budget information up online so that our on this web-based tool. That Mary Jane is thrilled that she'll have the opportunity to work closely with them through the development of this process. And if Mitch doesn't stop smirking, he's going to get in the middle of it too.
I'll drag him in somehow.
Exactly. New business? Anyone have anything under new business? No. Public forum? Anyone wishing to address public forum? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're not even going to ask about recusals. Thank you all.
I just want to say thank you for